and record. Hopefully this helps with audio quality. Welcome. I'm Maggie if we're new to each other. This is a chatty catch-up kind of video. I don't know actually what I have one thing I know I'm going to share about. It's a passage, but other than that, I don't really know. I didn't come with a list. Last time I did this, I think it was in November, and I have been meaning to do this again. So I have some water, get some tea, get some coffee, get some water, or if you're folding laundry or doing dishes, welcome. So glad that you are joining me with this. So, welcome. I'm going to start with a passage from John O'Donohue, Anam Cara, and it's this. Anam Cara. It's speaking to something that I'm continually thinking about, continually living into, and I hope that it also lands for you in your life right now. So the title of this, it's page 57. If you own the book, if you want to look it up online, the title of this section is called A Spirituality of Transfiguration. And he starts, spirituality is the art of transfiguration. We should not force ourselves to change by hammering our lives into any predetermined shape. We do not need to operate according to the idea of a predetermined program or plan for our lives. Rather, we need to practice a new art of attention to the inner rhythm of our days and lives. This attention brings a new awareness of our own human and divine presence. A dramatic example of this kind of transfiguration is when all parents know you watch your kids carefully, but then one day they surprise you. You still recognize them, but your knowledge of them is insufficient. You have to start listening to them all over again. It is far more creative to work with the idea of mindfulness rather than with the idea of will. Too often people try to change their lives by using the will as a kind of hammer to beat their life into a proper shape. The intellect identifies the goal of the program. I'm getting louder as this is important. And the will accordingly forces the life into that shape. I'm going to skip ahead. If you work with a different rhythm, you will come easily and naturally home to yourself. Your soul alone has the... Oh, you know what? I'm going to go back and read what I skipped because this is actually important. So, to say this again, the intellect identifies the goal of the program and the will accordingly forces the life into that shape. This way of approaching the sacredness of one's own presence is externalist and violent. It brings you falsely outside of yourself, and you can spend years lost in the wilderness of your own mechanical spiritual programs. If you work with a different rhythm, you will come easily and naturally home to yourself. Your soul alone has the map of your future, and therefore you can trust, love this indirect, oblique side of yourself. If you do, it will take you where you need to go, but more important, it will teach you a kindness of rhythm in your journey. I skipped a couple sentences here, and then he goes on. I just want to read this again. We should not force ourselves to change by hammering our lives into any predetermined shape. We don't need to operate according to the idea of a predetermined program or plan for our lives. Rather, we need to practice a new art of attention to the inner rhythm of our days and lives. Okay, so when you hear, right away when I hear this, I hear the objection of that sounds nice, it takes immense privilege, it takes immense risk to not operate according to predetermined program. I also know that there is, speaking to risk, there is a lot of untapped agency in that because of living out the consequences of what happens when you reject hammering your life into predetermined shape. There's fear, there's risk of unbelonging, there's all of it, right? Also, if we're new to each other, I'm sharing this as someone who I work for myself. I have worked for myself for years, and I have chosen time over money. Through my 20s, I really suffered the consequences of that, but it wasn't the convenient choice. It what didn't feel like the safe choice. It was the necessary choice, and so I was willing to suffer through that and surrender to that. But it was a huge risk. And there's that saying of leap and the net will appear, and what happens when you leap and the net doesn't appear? And what happens when you leap again and again, and you wonder how long you're going to keep betting on this desire, this passion, this path. I will say, I think that the net does appear way further down than we might like. The free fall is much longer than I have ever anticipated, but that it does work out, and it works out on, I'm not saying this broadly. I'm speaking from my own experience, that it works out on timelines that are not according to the ego, not according, in his words, to the mind or the intellect, willing it to be that way, but instead following the rhythm and seeing what's there and being willing to be in the risk of that unfolding. And also, covering needs, covering baselines. This is all a person-to-person thing. I don't want anyone to hear this and hear me, imply that they should just go for something when I don't know the context of your life. But what I do know is a theme that has been really alive for me lately has been, I think it's very fire horse. I think it's just feeling that net come into form more and more after years of risking, continuing to risk, but taking the long view. Something that has been coming up for me is what happens when we give ourselves the self-permission to go for it and to be willing to fail extravagantly at what matters most to us. And we do it anyway because we love it so much. You don't know how that novel is going to turn out. You don't know how that painting is going to turn out. You don't know how that move is going to turn out. Or like any major decision, the capacity for uncertainty has to be grown. And that's where we meet our fears, is when we don't know, when we don't have it figured out, when there is not a watertight plan. There's a difference between, and see if you can also sense into this for yourself, there's a difference between clarity of heart, clarity of desire, clarity of yearning and longing, and a deep knowing, and clarity of your mind, of knowing the why behind it, of having the watertight plan. And if you are waiting for clarity to just do your thing, clarity of mind, not of heart, and you have that heart deep knowing, I encourage you to see how you can do it and take steps forward and say yes to the life that's calling for you. I'm doing that in bolder ways that I have done. It's always new initiations. I think about some of the choices I made in my 20s. I was like, whoa, girl, like there was no rationality behind that. It was all heart, all gut. But I am in some new initiations right now, not knowing how it's going to work out and saying yes to it because that deep knowing is there and I'm plugged into it and I'm willing to take this outrageous risk. It's easier to take risks when you have people cheering you on, when you have evidence that things do work out, even on longer timelines. Certainly if you have money cushioning, or if you have, a good sense of your own self-esteem and resilience and energetic capacity, all of this is true. And I'm thinking about, I don't talk about this very often openly in this way, but I left the US around 23 and had very, very little money to make that move. And because there's so many logistics that go into that, the main thing was like getting there and then the big oh fuck moment of being there. And you have to prove a certain amount of money to live there. That's the case for many countries, right? And that is a whole story in itself, and also just how those years panned out. And what I saw myself through, and choosing with no backup plan besides like maybe my parents' basement, which also was part of the story, again and again and again, choosing that life that called to me, it worked out. And I feel so much pride for the part of myself that chose that, and also a lot of grief of what that meant. And it was worth it. So I've been thinking about these themes always, forever: courage, gumption, self-permission, risk. Living true to yourself, living out loud, having the courage to be yourself, having the courage to say yes to this life, not once it's clear and sorted and plotted out, but just throwing yourself into the yesness of your desire and what's possible for your life. This is creativity, and I don't mean doing this recklessly. I shared that like in the most vague way, a glimpse of my own story, which was like pretty reckless, and I had to do it, and it was from that deep place. And so but of course the whole time that I was doing that, family and friends, everyone's like, what is going on? What are you doing? Or they weren't tuned in to what that picture was, what that chapter really looked like. So I've been thinking about all these themes. I continue to think about these themes. Every week I'm in conversation with women, supporting them through these themes. That it's becoming more and more clear to me that what I most care about is supporting women to meet their deepest desires and creative longings, the yearnings of like the depth of their heart and their knowing. To not over-rationalize that, to not pathologize that, and to not make fear that can often be the same size, the same enormous size of that desire, to not let fear be a reason to not choose it, to not move forward, and to come into relationship with fear that is as big as those desires. I care about this so much. And what comes down to it, I've seen so often, this like the bottom questions that come up in this is, what if it's not for me? It's not really even a what if it doesn't work out. What if this isn't for me? What if by the end of it we find out that it's not for me, or that I don't deserve what I most want for my life? And that's actually different than what if it doesn't work out. It's getting at something that's more about self-concept and enoughness and shame. So there's a workshop that's coming up called Time to Do Your Thing, and I'm excited to explore, I want to say all of this in a broad sense, but we can only get to so much in a workshop. And that the date is, I'm hesitant to name the date because it's a little bit tentative, but it's going to be at the end of April or mid-April. I think mid-April. Time to do your thing. If you are looking to be in a space where you can journal about it, share about it, listen to others share, even just hear me riff on this. If you're like, I want to hear more about this feeling that it's no longer the time to defer your desires, to defer what's calling to you, and that you really feel that it's time to do your thing. There's so many questions in this, like what if it's not time, and how do I know that it's my thing instead of shoulds or these cultural expectations? How do I know I'm not following other people's desires? I do think that you know that, but if you know that you have something and that it is time to do that, then I would love to see you at that workshop. Again, I can't say the day and time on that because it's still coming into form, but I will have the sign up below. It's free, and you can just pop your name in there, and I will let you know first when it's happening. That is coming up, and I'm really excited about that. And I want to read this poem. I don't know who wrote this poem. This used to be one of the images on my background on my computer. I can't find the author of this poem, so I just thank anonymously who, the anonymous author of this. Here it is. I do not know the why, and I do not need to know the why. to do my work? And do I owe the why to anybody? You don't need to know the why. Or maybe you do know it, but it's in a different way than we've been taught. It's a different form of knowledge than we've been taught. That the knowing is there, but it's maybe living in ambiguity as well, or it's maybe living in the place that hasn't, reached into words yet. Or maybe it's too big or too scary to put into words, but you know it. Anyway, this is what I most care about. This kind of got heavy. I needed to sit down and share about these things. I care about this so much, and I'm wearing red. It's the year of the fire horse, and I'm just feeling like it's time to do your thing. It's time to do my thing. I am in the middle of so many initiations around this right now, and just want to be there for women navigating this. So I can see now that my camera is going to die, the battery is going to die, so I'll just wrap this up right now. Thank you so much for sharing this rambly, chatty. I didn't really update you on different things other than, I guess, that passage, what's coming up for me, and a workshop coming up for you if you want to join that. But I hope to do more of these. If you like these, let me know. They won't always be so heady and contemplative, but this is just what I'm feeling today. I've been in circle with women today and interviewing women today, and just really in my feels around this, and so I'm bringing that into this, and also just feeling, always practicing comfortability being on camera. So also thanks for your patience in that. Take really good care. Until next time.